Okay, let's jump right in. What's the most you have ever paid for a pizza? Maybe $30,
That,
40.
uh-huh.
Think about a truly expensive gourmet pizza experience. Now, what if I told you that? Just over a decade ago, someone paid a price for two pizzas that would eventually be valued at more than a Ferrari, more than a mansion, and at its peak, well, more than $500 million.
Wow. Yeah, that staggering retrospective value isn't just, a fun piece of trivia. It represents the exact moment Bitcoin stopped being just a theoretical computer science project
Right.
and became demonstrably real-world money. We are charting that crucial revolutionary leap.
And our sources really established the scale of this disruption early on. Before Bitcoin was even widely known, its underlying tech, well, it showed this revolutionary power. There was this single transaction,
Yeah,
transferring an astonishing $150 million between two accounts on the network.
150 million, just like that.
Yeah.
One transfer in seconds for basically zero fees, instantly and importantly, irrevocably.
That seems impossible for traditional finance.
Exactly. That power to move vast sums of value across borders without relying on central banks or, slow international wires. That showed its destructive potential for the existing payment systems right out of the gate.
Wow.
This immediate censorship-resistant capacity is what you have to keep in mind as we look at its, well, much more humble commercial beginnings.
Okay, so our mission today, then, is to understand that journey from that raw technical power, a zero-fee $150 million transfer, to the ability to purchase a slice of pepperoni.
Yeah.
How did Bitcoin go from being purely experimental software to something that held demonstrable, exchangeable, real-world value?
It really was that transition from a highly specialized technical solution solving the Byzantine generals problem, which we can get into, to a functional applied form of digital money.
Okay.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll really understand the full story of Bitcoin Pizza Day, the specific mechanics that actually made that purchase possible, and why we celebrate May 22nd every year as, the landmark moment it established its first actual price point.
All right, let's set the historical scene then.
Yeah.
We're talking early 2010.
Yeah.
The world has had the white paper for, over a year? And the core software has been running, building up the blockchain block by block.
Right. This was an invention by Satoshi Nakamoto, this anonymous figure, positing a way to create a completely decentralized network, one that could achieve consensus without relying on any single controlling authority. No bank, no government.
And that was the key, wasn't it? The decentralization.
That was the major breakthrough, because what Bitcoin did, technically speaking, was solve the Byzantine generals problem.
Okay, I've heard that term. Break it down for us. What is that?
Sure. So for decades, computer scientists had struggled with this idea. How do you get multiple distributed parties, like, think computers in a network, to agree on a single truth or consensus? Especially if some of those parties might be corrupt or malicious or maybe just offline or faulty.
Right. How can you trust the information if you can't trust everyone sending it?
Exactly. It had been an unsolved computer science problem since, 1982, a really tricky one.
And Bitcoin solved it. How? Was it the proof of work thing?
Absolutely. Proof of work, or POW, that's the core mechanism. It creates a system where the process of producing the truth, which in Bitcoin's case is the next valid block on the chain, is economically costly.
Costly how?
Miners have to expend real-world energy, electricity, lots of it, actually, to solve these complex cryptographic puzzles. By making corruption or lying prohibitively expensive in terms of energy and computing power.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin established algorithmic trust. It became mathematically more rational, more profitable to play by the rules and be honest than to try and cheat the network.
So the cost enforces the honesty.
Precisely. This expensive energy, this proof of work, is also what gives the resulting coin its digital scarcity. It's hard to make them. You can't just copy-paste them.
Okay, so Bitcoin was technically sound, a really brilliant computer science fix.
Yeah.
But what was the initial human reaction, outside the hardcore crypto nerds?
Well, our sources are pretty blunt about it. When the concept was first floated, it was, and I quote, laughed at, ignored, and dismissed.
Really? Laughed at?
Yeah. People just couldn't wrap their heads around it. That digital scarcity, secured purely by math, could hold real value. It seemed absurd to many.
Huh.
So 3 months after the paper, the software was published, the network started running. But by early 2010, even though these coins were being mined, they still faced that fundamental philosophical challenge. What are they actually worth?
Right, the existential hurdle. It's the difference between, I don't know, having points in a video game and having actual money in your wallet you can spend at the store.
That's a perfect analogy. And we need to talk for a second about what money actually is. At its core, money is a form of communication. It's an abstraction of value.
An abstraction. All right.
Yeah, it's not the value itself. It's a language we use to simplify trade. It's what some anthropologists call a shared cultural hallucination.
A shared cultural hallucination. I like that. It sounds kind of crazy, but it makes sense.
Think about it, right? We accept a dollar bill today not because the paper itself is intrinsically valuable.
No, of course not.
But because we collectively assume, we mutually agree, we hallucinate together, that if we accept it today, someone else, the store owner, the gas station attendant, whoever, will accept it tomorrow in exchange for goods or services.
It works because we all believe it works.
Exactly. Fiat money, like the dollar, is based on trust in the government that issues it. Commodity money, like gold, is based on its intrinsic utility and its natural scarcity. Bitcoin needed to establish a third type of trust. Trust in the algorithm, trust in the math, and its engineered scarcity.
So you can launch digital token, doesn't matter how elegant the code is or how secure the cryptography.
Yep.
If no one is willing to actually trade it for something tangible, a house, a car, or, like 2 large pizzas.
Then it just remains digital points, a score in a game that maybe only mathematicians or cryptographers are playing.
Right.
For Bitcoin to graduate from points to money, that small early community had to make a collective conscious move. Someone had to be the first one to step up and prove those coins had extrinsic value beyond just the internal network itself.
They had to bridge the gap.
They had to translate that complex math into some kind of physical utility, show it could buy something real.
And this brings us back to why Bitcoin had a shot when previous attempts at digital currencies, things like e-gold or Liberty Reserve, why they failed so spectacularly.
Right. Those earlier attempts all shared a fatal flaw. They were centralized.
Meaning
They used a central clearinghouse. They operated on a client-server model, exactly like your traditional bank. Your money existed as an entry, basically a debt, in a ledger controlled by a single central server or company.
Which sounds efficient, maybe, but
But it made them incredibly easy targets for governments to shut down, for legal action, or for catastrophic liquidation if the company went bust. They were inherently fragile, one point of failure.
And as a user in those systems, you were just the client. You didn't really have control.
Not at all. And that lack of control is what allows centralized systems to restrict access or censor transactions. We've seen this happen, right? Governments can impose capital controls overnight, like in Cyprus or Greece.
Yeah, I remember that.
Or, as our sources point out, organizations like WikiLeaks got cut off from major payment providers like Visa and MasterCard, not because of a court order, but because of, well, extrajudicial pressure.
So if you upset the wrong people, your money could just vanish or be frozen.
Bitcoin's decentralized design, secured by that proof of work we talked about, was explicitly created to prevent this exact scenario. It replaces that centralized choke point with mathematical consensus spread across thousands of computers worldwide.
So instead of trusting a bank or a payment processor?
You trust the math. You rely on the immutability of the code and the ledger. This system was designed from the ground up to be robust against intervention, censorship, and free of any single point of attack or control. That's the necessary foundation if you want truly independent digital cash.
Okay, so we have this theoretically perfect system, resistant to censorship, decentralized.
Yeah.
But it's still just theory until someone uses it for something real. It needs that first commercial spark.
Exactly. And enter the protagonist of our story, the person who decided to make this crucial philosophical leap tangible.
The pizza guy.
The pizza guy. Laszlo Hanyecz, he was a programmer living in Florida, an incredibly early adopter, an early miner. He'd accumulated thousands upon thousands of these coins just by running the Bitcoin software on his computer back when it was easy to do.
Thousands. Okay.
Okay.
And what was the context of his offer? Was this some kind of, high-stakes financial negotiation planned out?
Oh, not at all. Far from it.
No.
This was super casual. On May 18th, 2010, Laszlo just logged on to the Bitcoin Talk forum. That was basically the main online hangout for the tiny Bitcoin community back then.
Okay.
And he posted a really straightforward request. He wasn't trying to imply the coin should be worth a fortune yet. He just wanted to prove it could buy something, anything concrete.
And what did that post actually say? Because I hear these words are kind of legendary now.
They really are. He wrote, and this is a direct quote, "I'll pay 10,000 Bitcoins for a couple of pizzas. Like maybe 2 large ones so I have some left over for the next day."
Uh-huh. He wanted leftovers.
Yep. He continues, "I like having leftover pizza to nibble on later." He said he was happy for someone to order it for him and bring it over, or just arrange the delivery, and in return, he'd send them the 10,000 BTC.
That is just fantastic. The desire for leftovers is literally what bootstrapped a multi-billion-dollar digital economy. So this was Laszlo deliberately trying to achieve that philosophical goal we discussed earlier.
Absolutely. He was setting the first functional, real-world price for Bitcoin.
By asking for those 2 large pizzas, which were worth, what, about $41 back then?
Roughly, yeah, about $41. He was functionally assigning a price of approximately 0.0004 ABS per Bitcoin, 0.4 of a cent.
Wow.
This was the very first time that abstract digital value represented by those coins was explicitly translated into external, physical, exchangeable utility. Pizza utility.
Now, okay, for this exchange to actually work, he had to be totally certain the funds he was sending were legit, that they were under his control, and crucially, that the transaction couldn't be reversed later.
Yes, absolutely.
So this requires us to look just briefly at the mechanics. The Bitcoin wallet, the transaction itself, how does that work?
We definitely need to touch on that. Because when we talk about this real-world exchange, we have to understand what possession really means in Bitcoin. That trips a lot of people up.
Okay.
Bitcoin wallets don't actually contain Bitcoins, like a physical wallet holds cash or a safe holds gold bars.
Right, they hold keys, don't they?
Exactly. They contain keys, specifically the private key. These keys are what are mathematically linked to the balances recorded on that global shared ledger, the blockchain.
So the simple, maybe even brutal truth of the system is possession of the private key is like 10/10 of the law in Bitcoin. If you lose the key.
You lose the value associated with it, period. It's gone.
Wow.
So the only prerequisite for Laszlo to spend those 10,000 Bitcoins was him having access to that specific private key that could cryptographically sign the transaction. That digital signature is the authorization. It puts control entirely in the hands of the user.
Unlike a bank transfer, where the bank ultimately mediates and authorizes the movement of funds.
Here, the math mediates the authorization. The network just verifies the signature is valid according to the rules.
Okay, let's get slightly technical for a moment, because this seems where the genius, but also the risk lies. How exactly did Laszlo transfer that specific amount, 10,000 BTC, in a way that was instantly verifiable by the other guy and totally irreversible?
He did it using something called the Unspent Transaction Output Model, or UTXO model. It's fundamental to how Bitcoin works.
UTXO.
Okay. So a Bitcoin transaction is basically an authorization. It's a signed message. Crucially, it has to reference a specific prior amount of Bitcoin that Laszlo had received previously and hadn't spent yet. That's the UTXO, the unspent output.
Like referencing a specific check he'd received earlier?
Kind of, yeah. Or maybe like a specific gold coin he owned. He points to that UTXO as the input for his new transaction. Then he creates a new output, which is essentially a new lock, specifying the amount, 10,000 BTC, and the new owner's address, Jeremy Sturtevant's address.
Okay, so it's not like drawing from a big account balance. It's more like taking a specific lump sum you received before and dedicating it to someone else.
Exactly. And this is radically different from traditional banking, where you just have a balance that goes up or down. Here, you're managing these discrete chunks of value, these UTXOs.
That sounds complicated.
It can be, and it leads to the necessity of handling change correctly, which is critical to understand the technical side of the pizza purchase and why it wasn't quite as simple as just sending 10,000.
Change, like getting coins back from a cashier.
Pretty much, yeah. Because transaction inputs, those UTXOs, cannot be partially spent. They act more like physical currency notes or coins.
Meaning?
Meaning if Laszlo's 10,000 Bitcoins came from, say, a single UTXO he had previously received, that was worth 20,000 Bitcoins.
Okay.
He couldn't just digitally tear off half of that 20,000 UTXO to pay Jeremy.
So what did he have to do?
He would have had to spend the entire 20,000 BTC UTXO in his transaction.
The whole thing. But he only owed 10,000 for the pizza.
Exactly. So his transaction would need to include two outputs. Output 1, 10,000 Bitcoins go to the recipient, Jeremy. Output 2, the other 10,000 Bitcoins must be explicitly sent back to one of Laszlo's own addresses as change.
Ah, I see. He has to pay himself back the difference.
Precisely. And here's the kicker. If he forgot to include that second output, sending the change back to himself.
Oh, no.
The network protocol assumes that any difference between the total value of the inputs and the total value of the outputs is a transaction fee paid to the miner who includes the transaction in a block.
So wait, if Laszlo had that 20,000 BTC UTXO, and he only specified the 10,000 BTC output to Jeremy, The other 10,000 BTC would have just vanished
Yeah.
into a miner's fee.
It would have been unintentionally claimed by the miner as a massive fee, a 10,000 BTC tip.
Good grief. So he would have paid 20,000 BTC for 2 pizzas.
Potentially, yes. And that's why managing UTXOs and calculating change correctly is so crucial in Bitcoin. It's usually handled automatically by wallet software these days, but back then, it required more care. It ensures the system is cryptographically sound, but it places the responsibility entirely on the user to be meticulous, or use software, that is.
Okay, that is elegant, but definitely unforgiving. And this structure then leads to the finality aspect. Once Laszlo constructed that transaction correctly, signed it with his private key, and it got broadcast and included in a confirmed block on the blockchain, it became irreversible.
Totally irreversible. That's the cornerstone of its trustless nature. Unlike credit cards or PayPal or even most bank transfers, which are typically reversible for a period.
Right, chargebacks exist.
Exactly, which introduces risk for the seller, needing identity checks and stuff. Bitcoin transactions, once confirmed by the network's proof of work, are final, set in digital stone.
And that assurance of finality is what allowed Jeremy, the guy in California, to trust Laszlo, the stranger in Florida he met on a forum, to order $41 worth of pizza on his credit card.
Right. Because once Jeremy saw that 10,000 BTC transaction confirm on the blockchain, he knew the digital value transfer was complete and could not be taken back. It was, in effect, digital cash changing hands. Final settlement.
Okay, so Laszlo posts the offer on the forum, May 18th, 2010. 10,000 BTC for 2 large pizzas, maybe with leftovers. He's effectively offering maybe $41 worth of pizza, hoping someone will take him up on it and establish that first real-world price. What was the immediate community reaction? Did people jump on it?
Not exactly an immediate stampede, no. For a few days, the post just kind of sat there. People were intrigued, sure, but also cautious. You have to remember, this was still mostly a theoretical experiment, almost a game to many people involved.
So they weren't sure if it was real or if it would even work.
Yeah, some replied expressing skepticism, asking if he was serious. Others suggested he could probably just sell the Bitcoin somewhere first and then buy the pizzas himself with dollars if he really wanted them. They weren't quite getting the point he was trying to make.
Which was to prove that the direct exchange was possible.
Exactly, to make Bitcoin itself the medium of exchange.
So who was the brave soul? Who finally decided to make that leap from, theoretical computer code to actual real-world pizza delivery guy?
That person was Jeremy Sturdivant. He was just a 19-year-old student at the time living in California. He went by the username Jerkos on the Bitcoin Talk forum.
19 years old, okay.
Yep. And on May 22nd, 2010, 4 days after Laszlo's initial post, Jeremy accepted the offer.
Okay, walk us through that simple but now totally historic exchange. The logistics must have been a bit weird, right? 2 strangers hundreds of miles apart trying to arrange a meal delivery.
It was actually brilliantly simple in its execution. Jeremy, over in California, got Laszlo's pizza order details, what kind he wanted, where to deliver it.
Right.
He then just called up a Papa John's pizza place in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where Laszlo was living. Jeremy used his own credit card to pay the roughly $41 for 2 large pizzas.
Ah, so Jeremy fronted the cash.
Yeah.
Using the traditional reversible payment system, ironically.
Exactly. He paid Papa John's with his credit card. The pizzas get made and delivered to Laszlo's house in Florida.
And once Laszlo got the pizzas.
That's when the real history was made. Laszlo confirmed he got the food. He then constructed the Bitcoin transaction, spending his UTXO, sending 10,000 BTC from his wallet directly to Jeremy Sturdivant's Bitcoin address.
Transaction broadcast confirmed by the miners.
And bang, complete. The world had its first widely documented commercial exchange using Bitcoin for a tangible good.
And Laszlo, did he realize the significance? He documented the moment, right?
Oh, yeah, he definitely documented it. His follow-up post on the forum is another legendary piece of Bitcoin history. He triumphantly declared, "I just want to report that I successfully traded 10,000 Bitcoins for pizza."
Huh. Success!
And he posted pictures. There's one showing the 2 massive Papa John's pizzas sitting on a coffee table, and another kind of heartwarming one showing his young daughters happily eating slices. It proved it was real. The abstract digital stuff had literally become dinner.
That's amazing. And this whole transaction, it really hinges on that idea you mentioned earlier, Bitcoin as a content type. Our sources use that phrase. It's almost hard to believe that this pizza order, placed by a student in California, fulfilled by a store in Florida, was ultimately authenticated by just a tiny piece of data.
Yeah, around 250 to 350 bytes. Tiny.
Just a few hundred bytes. That could theoretically travel through the air by any means.
Yeah.
Smoke signals, carrier pigeon,
That really is the true mind shift here. The transaction itself is just a small package of data. It's completely torn free from whatever medium carries it. Because it contains no sensitive data in itself, the digital signature reveals nothing personal about Laszlo. The Bitcoin addresses are pseudonymous. There are no names or account numbers like in a bank transfer.
So the data packet itself is inherently secure.
Inherently secure and inherently public, paradoxically. It doesn't matter if it's transmitted over completely unsecured Wi-Fi or, theoretically by smoke signal or light signal. The content itself is robust.
And you mentioned before it could be sent by smoke signal. Why is that specific nature, that small, self-contained data packet, so important for security and function?
Because the transaction is self-verifying.
Yeah.
That tiny data package contains all the information necessary for the entire network to validate it. Any full node, any computer running the Bitcoin protocol that holds a full copy of the blockchain ledger.
Which anyone can do.
That node can independently validate Laszlo's transaction in seconds. It checks the signature against the public key. It checks that the reference UTXO hasn't already been spent. It checks the math. It doesn't need to ask Visa or PayPal or Bank of America or anyone for permission or verification.
It carries its own proof of authenticity.
Exactly. Proof of authenticity and proof of spendability are embedded right within its structure.
So by successfully exchanging this new self-verifying content type for a physical, tangible good, the pizzas, the network effectively proved that its mathematical rules translated directly into real economic utility. The system worked, completely outside of and regardless of any validation from the centralized financial world.
It proved the currency wasn't tethered to government trust or bank IOUs or anything like that. It was tethered only to the mutual agreement of the users, Laszlo and Jeremy in this case, and the unforgiving, verifiable math itself.
Wow.
And, the act of paying that fee, even if it was tiny back then, it sort of legitimizes the transaction in an economic sense, too. Laszlo valued getting those pizzas enough to construct and broadcast his cryptographically secured currency transaction.
And Jeremy valued receiving that future potential of 10,000 bitcoins, enough to front the $41 in fiat currency.
Exactly. It was a true peer-to-peer exchange. This single act of commerce fulfilled Bitcoin's core purpose to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, a medium of exchange.
Okay, it is really hard to overstate why this seemingly small, kind of quirky transaction became so legendary. It's clearly more than just a funny historical footnote about expensive pizza.
Oh, absolutely. It's basically the origin story of Bitcoin's price discovery. Before May 22nd, 2010, you could argue Bitcoin was technically worth nothing in any practical, exchangeable sense. It was just points on a screen.
Right.
Afterwards, it had an established, albeit tiny price. It was officially worth 0.0041 tones per coin, based on the going rate for Papa John's. Laszlo Hanyecz wasn't just buying dinner.
He was creating financial history.
He really was. He was underwriting the entire system with real-world, tangible value by making that first trade. He put a stake in the ground.
And now comes the part of the story that just blows your mind every time you hear it, doing the math on those 10,000 bitcoins today. Let's talk about the sheer financial scale of this exchange in retrospect.
We have to, right? It's unavoidable. If we look at Bitcoin's all-time high price, which briefly touched around 69,000 US dollars per coin.
$69,000.
Yeah.
For one Bitcoin.
For one Bitcoin. That single transaction for two pizzas, the 10,000 BTC Laszlo sent Jeremy, reached a peak value of roughly $690 million US dollars.
$690 million for two pieces. Words fail.
It's absolutely staggering. Even today, the price fluctuates wildly, but the value of that transaction is very often measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
It completely redefines the concept of expensive leftovers. Now, it's really easy for us, looking back with perfect hindsight, to feel a sense of, pity maybe for Laszlo, the guy who spent a king's ransom on pepperoni.
Yeah, or maybe envy for Jeremy, the lucky teenager who happened to accept the deal and presumably held on to at least some of it.
Right. But our sources, and Laszlo himself actually, make it clear that this shouldn't be viewed primarily as a story of regret.
No, not at all. Laszlo achieved exactly what he set out to do at that moment in time. He wasn't consciously spending some vast future value. He was creating the initial value by doing the transaction.
He was a pioneer.
He was absolutely a pioneer. He was willing to put his own skin in the game, his 10,000 mined coins, to demonstrate the potential of this nascent technology. Someone had to do it.
So his sacrifice, if you want to call it that, in a way, it paved the path for Bitcoin to actually become a functional currency, or at least aspire to be one. It was the first widely documented real-world commercial transaction. That established its historical importance as a potential medium of exchange.
And that's precisely why the global Bitcoin community celebrates May 22nd every single year as Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Right. I've seen stuff about that online.
Yeah, it's a commemoration. It's remembering the day the network acquired tangible economic utility and took its very first baby step away from being purely academic software or a niche hobbyist project.
Okay, so this validation, proving that mathematical rules could facilitate a real-world trade without needing a human intermediary like a bank, that opened the door to applications that were previously unimaginable, didn't it? Especially concerning the cost and speed of moving value, like that $150 transfer example.
It really did. But like any truly disruptive technology, this success immediately brought conflict and resistance.
How so?
Well, when truly disruptive technologies arrive, they almost always meet resistance from the established, entrenched systems. Think about the early days of the internet itself.
Oh.
The incumbent telecommunications companies, the big phone companies, they were absolutely certain that this weird packet-switched network thing, TCP/IP, could never reliably carry real-time voice calls. They dismissed it as a toy for academics.
Right, they thought it was too chaotic, not reliable enough compared to their dedicated circuit-switched lines, but they were wrong.
Totally wrong. And ironically, they were simultaneously building the very fiber optic infrastructure that would eventually enable the voice over IP, 4IP revolution that disrupted their own business model.
Yeah, that's a great parallel. So it's the same kind of cycle with Bitcoin.
It seems to be the exact same cycle. The internet itself, it perpetually failed to scale gracefully for decades. First, Usenet forums hit capacity. Then email servers couldn't handle the load. Then attaching large files broke everything. Then streaming high-quality video was deemed impossible on the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, I remember all those stages. Buffering.
Right. Every single time an innovation pushed the limits, the network temporarily failed to scale adequately for the next big application. But in doing so, it successfully scaled to handle the previous application that had just become mainstream.
So Bitcoin is no different then. It's still, even today, perpetually failing to scale gracefully, according to critics, just like the internet did. You constantly hear the financial gatekeepers insisting it can't possibly handle high transaction volume like Visa or MasterCard.
And maybe in its current form, it can't match Visa directly on the base layer, but that's the beauty of the system and the point people miss. Its initial success, the very fact that Laszlo's Pizza transaction was irreversible and the core system worked exactly as designed, led directly to all the subsequent scaling debates and innovations, like the Lightning Network, that followed.
Because it now had real value and real demand.
Exactly. Bitcoin suddenly had a price, it had demonstrated utility, and now the battle for its future architecture, how to make it handle more users and transactions, had to begin in earnest.
Okay, so let's recap then. The true significance of that first documented exchange, the Bitcoin Pizza Day transaction, it wasn't really the monetary amount in fiat terms, especially not back then.
No, the $41 was almost irrelevant.
It was the successful demonstration that a decentralized, irreversible transaction could actually be executed in the physical world using this purely digital abstraction of value. That was the pioneering step needed to establish a price, however small, and prove the whole system could work as digital cash.
And ultimately, buy those two now legendary pizzas.
Bitcoin now had a price. It had been used to buy something real.
That small early transaction really did open the floodgates for speculation, for development, for wider adoption, and inevitably for attention from regulators and governments. The system now represented real, tangible value that the establishment powers couldn't just ignore anymore.
Which sets us up perfectly for our next deep dive. Because Bitcoin now had a price and had proven it could buy something real. This really opened the floodgates. So next time we're going to explore the tumultuous road immediately following this first real-world transaction.
Yeah, the Wild West days were just beginning.
We'll dive into the rise of the very first Bitcoin exchanges, places where people could actually buy and sell it more easily. We'll look at the economic growing pains, the demands that immediately started challenging the network's capacity, and that inevitable collision between this radical, cheap new network and the established financial gatekeepers who, frankly, sought to dismiss or even crush the value of this new digital medium.
It's a fascinating period. Things started moving very fast after Pizza Day.